I've been meaning to make this video for a while, and I just haven't because I've been focused on other things, including my actual brick and mortar business. But I guess it's time. It's serendipitous. Tim Pool put out a segment today talking about the roles of males and females and conservatism and progressivism and things like that. And a lot of us have been saying these same things for years. This is not new information, but it's nice to see somebody with such a massive, massive audience finally saying this stuff. And so in a sense, I'm kind of responding to the video, but I'm not calling him out on anything. And the reason I'm not is because he was mostly right. I mean, and the things which are subject to opinion, I generally agree with. But I do want to give just a little bit of extra nuance on the subject, and really going back to what I've been wanting to talk about, and that is the fact that conservatism and progressivism are not even political positions. They're not. They're temperamental positions. Yes, if you go back, and Tim loves bringing up the old left-right aristocracy establishment, right, versus the revolutionaries, literally left and right. And that's fine, right? That's just a starting point and gives us the terminology that we're using. But when we start looking at these things, they've actually done psychometric research on people who identify as, they usually use the term liberal. It's not really the best term for progressives. It's not the same thing. And then they, of course, use the term conservative, which is a fine term. Conservatism is actually the easiest starting point. Conservatism is the easiest one to peg because it is kind of a single point goal, right? Because it's not even that it is in favor of the status quo. It's that when you dig down into the fact that conservatives score high on conscientiousness, where they score on the moral foundations and things like that, what you're actually looking at is conservatives in general are more or less risk averse and in general are in favor of stability. And that's why tradition is such a big part of it. And that is why conservatives are typically represented with religious folks, because these are traditional things that create a bit of stability. There is a mindset here, a psychological mindset that actually goes into this idea of, even if something's broken, if I understand it, it is predictable, and the brokenness is predictable. It's literally just the survival tactic of the devil you know versus the devil you don't. That's really all it is. Conservatism is not a political position at all. It is saying that no matter how bad something is, if I understand it and I've done the math and all that, then we just keep to doing this one thing. And there is time and place for that. There is some truth to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The problem is sometimes we start saying that when things are broken, because we don't want to create change, which creates unknown variables. People don't like unknowns. It's actually one of the reasons that religion is so prolific throughout the entirety of human history, is because people are really, really bad with unknowns. And when you're bad with unknowns, you start trying to fill in those blanks. And that's why we have so many competing religions. People have filled in the blanks differently. Now, progressives, on the other hand, they're a little harder to peg, right? And I think the easiest way to say it, right? Because different people will say different things. And when you look at the different psychometric data for people who generally self-ascribe as liberals, and again, it's not really the correct term, but when you look at the data, they're a little bit kind of all over the place. But generally speaking, you see a lot of things in the category of fairness and trying to make sure that things are just and right. And that's fair too. But often, if conservatives can be kind of lined up with, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, then oftentimes you could look at progressives at the extreme end, at least, as doing something is better than doing nothing. In many ways, it is irrespective of risk. It is irrespective of potential problems and all of that. And so really what you have is, and this is something that Tim had mentioned, right? And it's like the idea is like the progressives pull and like the conservatives just kind of apply the brakes. And that's fair, but what that means is that conservatives aren't really an opposition, right? And so it's fine to be sensitive to problems and to have a desire to fix problems. We need that. We absolutely need that. And then we need the conservatives who say, hey, wait. We've got some stability here. Why is something stable, right? Because stability generally means something is being relatively successful. So if you have stability and change, stability is not pulling, it's just an anchor, right? The problem is that the left-right paradigm is kind of two-dimensional, but you have 360 degrees around, and then of course you three-dimensionalize it, and you have all of these degrees of freedom. So there's all sorts of directions that things can be pulling. All the conservatism is doing is just providing an anchor point. And so these things, they're not political positions at all. They're temperamental positions. And it makes sense. And this is something that Tim had mentioned too, right? If you look back at kind of like the historical record, division of labor, the actual like genetics and how the human race propagates and all of that, it actually kind of makes sense that you would have both forces because they create a balance for each other, and it's really powerful, and it actually makes sense. The problem is that we have turned them into us versus them political groupings, and that actually ruins the whole paradigm. Politics ruins everything. It just absolutely ruins everything. But yeah, it's like we need to be careful. Right? Yes, conservatives are conservatives, but conservatives don't mean Republican. Conservatives just mean kind of stability seeking, right? And progressives are progressives, but it doesn't necessarily mean Democrats. It actually is something a whole lot different. And you can actually have people who are different kinds of conservative and progressive on different issues, just like people could be introverted and extroverted in different scenarios. Like, that's how it works. And you may be more or less conservative and you may be more or less progressive overall. But I guarantee you have some things that you're more conservative on and some things you're more progressive on. That's just kind of how life works, right? Because again, these are not political positions, they're temperamental positions. So I don't want to push this one too much farther. I really wanted to bring this up. We can actually talk about like what liberalism is in the classical sense, the traditional sense, but you really got to stop using the term liberal to point fingers at the political opposition, because it's not accurate. It's just not accurate. And a lot of that again goes to the fact that we have taken these positions from a certain historical set point and said those people pushing for those things were the liberals. And then all of a sudden that creates a team, and now anybody who wears the team colors is called a liberal, even though that's not really how that works. We'll talk about that another time. So I'm going to cut this off here so I don't ramble on too long, and I will talk to you guys later. Good journey.
Chocolate covered laser discs, flashing like a dagger in the night.